what is called sovereign capital. And this sovereign capital must start with us recognizing that we are a young continent. We are a young continent with over 60% of the population youthful. And you may wonder why I'm saying this, but let's put things in perspective. Across the entire African continent today, and that's why I said this is a soul-searching discussion here today. Across the entire continent, most countries won their self-determined role in the early 60s and 70s. But astonishingly, while in the 1970s, Africa accounted for over just 3% of global manufacturing output, over time, these shares continuously shrink to a point that, as we're speaking here today, the continent is constrained when it comes to added value enterprises, adding value to what it produces. It imports unemployment and export employment. There is absolutely no reason for that in 2022 for us to be talking about this aspect. Manufacturing is the basis upon which every economy that has developed is actually built on. But for the case of Africa, it's shrunk by 50% since the 70s. This scenario, as we speak today, plays out in health. It plays out in energy. It plays out in energy where the continent is actually accounting for less than 1% of global solar installed capacity, yet we have 365 days of sunshine. We have 620 million Africans who don't have energy. Today, they're energy impoverished, no access to electricity, yet the continent boasts of the biggest solar power capacity on earth. This is paradoxical. And so this discussion here today is, yes, it is a conference to ensure that at least we strengthen biosecurity and seize opportunities to tap into the biosafety method, but at the same time, you can only go to war with the army you have, and Africa's army is high young people, and that's why I'm putting this perspective. So when you look at the continent today, Africa produces 1 billion tons of raw materials, worth $406 billion US, which underpins some of the most lucrative industries in the entire world. Smartphone industries, the minerals come from this continent. Solar energy industry that is worth $190 billion US a year. The minerals come from this this continent. Aircraft manufacturing industry that is worth $400 billion US. Among others, Africa producing these inputs get missing when it comes to value-added products. The continent imports up to 95% of all medicines that it uses. And this is a big market for the continent. It's a big market opportunity. But Africa has about 375 drug manufacturers for about 1.4 billion citizens. Yet, in comparison, India, a country whose population is equivalent to Africa's population, has up to 10,500 manufacturers. Isn't that paradoxical? Yet, at the same time, Africa spends $16 billion US importing pharmaceuticals, a significant missed opportunity for enterprise opportunities to tap, especially now that we have the Africa Continental Free Trade, which is worth $3.4 trillion US that can actually be tapped into. Why have I laid this down? I've laid this down for a reason, to show the missing link that has costed Africa opportunities. The missing link that has costed Africa opportunities is the failure to make human capital the engine of development, the engine center of our development. Because we know that while human capital, which is people's skills, people's abilities, people's passions, people's aptitude, the fundamental of human capital, the skills, the talents, the energy, the passion, the aptitude to represent is value up to 15 times the value of natural capital and 4 times the value of produced capital. So why on earth do we then prioritize minerals more than human skills? That's where the failure starts. And that's why I'm here today to try to debunk this, to put meaning so that at least we can be able to understand the reality of where we felt and where we sleep, so that at least we cannot be able to make those mistakes moving forward. As we speak today, Africa is known more for the quality of her tea. Africa is known more for the quality of her cocoa. Africa is known more for the quality of the beauty of her landscape, of the beaches, the wildlife, the glitter of her gold and diamonds, than for her talents. We're not known for our talents. Africans are very talented people. We're skillful, passionate, and energetic, creative, resilient people that have proven over time against selflessness of the people we know. But we are not known for this. The quality of an African remains undefined. We are not proud of who we are to the extent that we're supposed to be. And that's where we get missing at. We are known for the wildlife, for the wonderful sceneries and glamour. Yes, but do we project our skills? Do we project our aptitudes, our creativity? The answer is not optimal. And that's why we are having this conversation here today. The quality of an African remains undefined up to date, yet this is the most sovereign capital that we have. And this has been the biggest missed opportunity for the continent. So as the generation, the current generation today, we must turn the page. And so this conversation here today, I call it a conversation. It's not a lecture, it's a conversation. It's for each and every one of us to ask this very simple question. How can I play a part in ensuring that we turn challenges into opportunities without complaining? Because we complain and the problems do not change. The problem remains the same today, tomorrow, next year. And so we need to start becoming solutions providers in the process. As we're speaking today, let's face it, at no time have the conversation like it has been in this conference with a very timely team that unleashes the opportunities that sometimes are hidden in biosecurity and biosafety. At no time has this conversation been more important, not only because the past 2 years have taught us lessons under the cyclone of COVID-19 pandemic that reshaped lives of millions of people, caused pain, but yet we have the Ukraine-Russian war that people are feeling it in the kitchen tables. At the same time, we have the elephant in the room, which is climate change, that is redefining the contours of this continent more dramatically than any other. Drought in the Horn of Africa. 30 million people, as we speak today, suffering, going to bed without food, with their stomach aching of hunger. Floods, which we've seen Kogi State across over 33 states in Nigeria and other countries in the continent today. These are not abstraction or theater. These are realities. So we are faced with these calamities and challenges today. And the big question is, which amount of money can be able to solve this if we do not leverage also on our skills and talents? No matter how much you have, if you don't have the skills that can be able to turn a challenge into an opportunity, the money will finish and the problems will remain. That's a fact. We're not told those realities sometimes. But I'm here today to tell you these realities because as we're speaking now, climate change actually is costing the productivity of each and every African by up to 15% every year. And right here in Nigeria, climate change costs the country up to 100 billion in lost economic opportunities each and every year, which is projected to be 4 times more in the next 27 years from today. Across the continent, humanity and our shared environment face 3 planetary crises that I did allude to on Monday. What we're facing here today, climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution caused by unsustainable consumption and production are challenges that are significantly impacting the entire African region and the world. And these impacts are sweeping across everyone, touching and causing pain, regardless of whether you are young or you are old. The pain caused is felt across the board. For example, if you take Nigeria here today, generating an estimated 500,000 tons of plastic waste each and every year, which further degrades the environment. Lagos, where we are in today, generates every day over 2,000 tons of daily plastic. This morning I was opportune to actually visit the waste exchange that is run by young people in Lagos here. The waste recycling initiative, showcasing that waste is wealth. that you waste opportunities if you are not tapping into that world. But yet, sometimes when we see these challenges, we faint under them rather than looking at the opportunities that can be tapped from them. These plastic bottles, what they are showcasing is that they are not ending up in landfills. They're turning them into plastic tires. They're creating jobs for young people. They're creating jobs for our mothers. And I saw our amazing mothers there. We actually sang a very nice song. Plastics, they constitute worlds and opportunities. But sometimes we don't tell our story, and I don't know why we are afraid to tell our stories. If you do not tell your story, it will be told to you in the way that befits the person who tells it. And that's what we're missing out. And that's why I structured this discussion here today. In the face of emergencies, our resilience must go beyond what we know. Our resilience must go beyond the talk that we are told, because there is profound power in a narrative. If you cannot control your narrative, you will be controlled. That's a fact. It's not a fallacy. It's the truth. And that's why I'm telling you here today, because I understand something about it. This African proverb reminds us, as we speak today, that in time of crisis, the wise build bridges. The wise build bridges. And this is a stark reminder that wise people never remain passive in their mistakes. That amidst the calamities and challenges that we're facing as a people, as a continent, as citizens, we cannot be able to remain passive in our mistakes, but apply ourselves to the solutions that bridge the transition from crisis to success by dedicating ourselves to start to see opportunities in challenges. That every challenge is a disguised opportunity, but it can only be an opportunity when we are prepared for it. Opportunities meet those who are prepared, and that is why sometimes we say people are lucky. Yes, because they were prepared. Of course, we have undeserved grace, but if you're not prepared, you will still miss the opportunity. We will still miss the opportunity. And therefore, we must be able to leverage this ability and be the solution providers, because the base ladder starts with us to ascend to that place where we must be. So today, everyone here, regardless, and those who are listening online, regardless of whether you're young or you're old, there is nothing like young, there's nothing like old. What matters is progress. An idea that a young person comes up with will solve a community problem and benefit the young and old. An idea that someone who is old comes up with will solve the problems of the community and benefit the young. So each and every one of us is important in this solutions process. Each and every one of us is important because we are living in a moment, what I call the defining moment, where everybody's decision can make or break and can define the kind of African destiny that we can be able to create for our own selves. So I stand here today before you as a son of this country, of course, as a global citizen, to say that each and every one of us must be called to wisdom. To say that we need no special invitation to be called to the solutions table. To say that we need no special prioritization or consideration to become a solution provider. And that each and every one of us must report for duty. As we live here today, in whatever profession we are in, we must start to leverage that profession to inspire one another, because inspiration is very important, but sometimes we miss to understand that it's a project that we must be part and parcel of. That young person in that community that have lost everything, that has never gone to school, that have no connections to those at the top, get disenfranchised, but just telling that young person that he or she can make it and starting to guide, regardless of tribe or which country you come from, and inspire our young people can drive a transformational narrative that we've never seen, and inspire people to start doing what has never been done. When we start to say that they cannot do it, we are destroying value. We are destroying our sovereign capital. When we start to use narratives that we are too poor. Yes, I came from a poor, I get something about poverty. I grew up in a poor home. But poverty is not an indictment. Neither is it a permanent condition for anybody. So our narrative matters. And for us to be able to address this, we need one word: reimagination. So we must reimagine our thinking. And so I'm going to leave you with 5 aspects as I round up with this conversation. Why do we need a reimagination? We need a reimagination of solutions because that is what is required of you and me, to see things through a solutions lens, not through a complaining lens. To see things through a solutions lens, not through a blame game lens. To see things through the perspective of enterprising, that we can see our waste and see that it is world. And that we can protect our environment, understanding that our environment protected help us to be healthy. That our environment protected help put food on the table, because when you plant, even if you apply that fertilizer, without water, how will the crops grow? And when there is a drought, without water, how will you be able to even survive? Your cattle and livestock will not be able to do so. And that we need to start to think in a synergistic and systems way, not in silos, because the reality is that biosafety and biosecurity, the One Health thinking through a systemic way is what we need today. But that thinking must start from within. That I alone cannot do it, because we constitute the part of the solution. The sum total of our collective efforts will make progress. But individually, we will make progress, but not enough. And so we need each and everyone, regardless of where we come from and regardless of how we look, regardless of our accent. I am proud of my accent. Yes, it's my unique ability. And I hear some Africans tell, oh, how you get this kind of accent now? Now, which part you come out? I'm proud of it. We must be proud of who we are. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the first aspect to reimagine is our food systems. I have never understood this. We are in a continent with one of the best indigenous knowledge and crops and different attributes that we don't feel proud to project. I've never understood. We must reimagine our food systems. We live in a continent with what I call a golden crop. Cassava is Africa's gold. It can survive during drought and during floods. The Russian-Ukraine war saw the continent inflation increase by 12.2%, yet food prices skyrocketed to 50%. I have not heard a discussion across the continent on how we can leverage cassava to replace wheat. Yet it is a climate-resilient crop that can grow during droughts and floods. What is wrong with us? Now, who bewitch we now? What is wrong with us? It is consumed by over 500 million people across the continent. Cassava is consumed by and has a market value of over 23.5 billion US dollars. It is a crop that under the changing temperature, wheat is going to reduce by up to 45%, but cassava will only be reduced by 8%. Why are we trying to look for gold where there is no gold, and we are abandoning our diamonds just because of a narrative that we should not look at where we are? And I think yesterday, the distinguished professor said that we go to look for things in Sokoto when there is something in our Sokoto, right? We have something in our pocket and we go to look for it somewhere else. Why I'm bringing this up is that cassava is important, and therefore it's a high-value, climate-resilient crop. We must reimagine our food system to leverage what we have, not what we don't have. You can only get what you don't have by using what you have, but we focus on what we don't have. And therefore, it is important to make cassava not only an important crop for the continent, but one in which we should leverage to win off the importation of the 35 billion US dollars in importing unemployment and exporting employment, and invest that in research in cassava, in turning cassava to flour. And the good news is, cassava can produce up to 300 products, whether it is cassava bread, cassava cakes, cassava flour, and so on and so forth. And we can substitute wheat with cassava. And that takes me to a second point. We must reimagine our energy systems. We live in a continent today where we have 620 million citizens who are energy impoverished. I talked about 365 days of sunshine. I talked about a continent that actually is only harnessing 1% of that sunshine. Yet, we know that we can be able to do much better. But I want to bring up something here today that is not popular, but I'll bring it up because it's the right thing to do. I will be intellectually dishonest if I don't bring that up. And I brought this up 2 days ago, which what I said was, you cannot ignore the reality of the continent and think you can solve the problems. The over 620 million African citizens who are energy impoverished live in rural areas. Grid electricity will not necessarily solve their problem because it will not even reach there. It's only mini-grid and off-grid that can be able to solve the problems of our mothers, our brothers and sisters in these rural areas. But even when you get electricity to them, they need to still buy the light bulbs. So if you don't help to ensure that electricity become what I call competitive energy to add value, to dry their vegetables, to dry their tomatoes, to use solar fridges, so they can be able to make money and replace those bulbs, how will they survive even with the electricity? This is just common sense. To address Africa's challenges doesn't need magic and juju, it needs logic. Africa's challenges need logic, reason and logic. And that takes me to the point which is not even talked about sometimes. So we think light, electricity, and then sometimes we forgot cooking. 700,000 Africans die each and every year. These are not statistics, these are people's mothers, brothers and sisters, fathers, who die because of indoor pollution. Why? Because they depend on charcoal. They've committed no crime. It's just because they don't have an alternative. So they depend on charcoal. Yet, we know that turning simple agricultural waste into fuel briquettes is 3 to 4 times more effective than charcoal, burns longer, and will save lives. But that's not our narrative. Our narrative is, I will not get a job now with the Sofa for Africa here. That must stop. That must stop. We have opportunities. The charcoal industry is worth $20 billion in the continent. Briquettes can create millions of jobs for young people, and they can tap into that 20 billion. That takes me to the third point. We must reimagine finance. We don't get money now. We don't get money. Now so did they talk. This continent, the informal sector engages over 80% of the continent. I grew up in a community like millions across in an informal sector, and I'm proud because I learned the best lessons of my life in that informal setting. My mother will contribute money with her friends, and they will buy books and uniform for us to go to school. They were using what is called njangi. They still do today. They were saving in little cooperatives, and they would share the money and use the money to provide the social amenities that were needed in the home at the time. Today, every community across Africa have a cooperative. Why are we not leveraging those cooperatives to supercharge and turbocharge them with the little resources that can come in so that our mothers and brothers can use that as the starting point to have access to resources? Social capital is important, and the trust that they've established in that community, if we only think big before we start thinking of reality, we might not get it right. The informal sector represents over 300 billion in lending gap that remains on tap. Yet we don't talk about it. And that takes me to the fourth point, which is diversification. We must diversify. If there is any lesson that we picked up from the past 2 years during COVID, it should be that while emergencies may be on a global scale, they do not affect everyone equally. That's a lesson that we learned. And yesterday, my very good friend, Dr. Boba, asked a question. He moderated a session here. He asked a question: what were the lessons that were learned, and what did we unlearn? And that panel discussion was very, very important. And I decided to frame this around this because the reality that the past 2 years taught us is that it is our responsibility to be prepared. It is our responsibility to be prepared. And I call diversification the biggest security of a system. If you cannot diversify, you cannot be resilient. Resilience is an attribute of diversification. And if we don't see diversification as our biggest strategy in anything, then we fail. And that's why this conference is very, very important. And the most important enabler of diversification is what I call skills retooling. Skills retooling are important. So we must learn new skills, regardless whether you study biochemistry, physics, like myself. It doesn't matter. Learn and venture to new aspects. Learn how to turn agricultural waste into fuel briquettes. This information is out there. It is out there. And we are doing this across the continent, leveraging on a tool that we developed called innovative volunteerism, just inspiring young people to voluntarily volunteer themselves to learn. And over 2,000 young people across the continent today have voluntarily volunteered themselves, and they are creating their enterprises, and they are tapping into this enormous space that no one is tapping into, turning environmental challenges into opportunities. We see them develop solar dryers. We see them develop agricultural waste into fuel briquettes, plastics into pavement ties, and etc. And that takes me to a point which I did mention 2 days ago, data. Success stories are the only thing that move people. Make man no lie you. If people don't see, they will not believe. Very few will believe. Ideas are important, but success stories are the only thing that move people. No matter how good or brilliant or excellent your idea and actions are, success stories do matter. And that is why you must always try to have a proof of concept. It works. It works. And therefore, verifiable proof of grand success stories that you gather the data and use the data with a proof of concept to showcase will sell and take you far. With all these aspects that I've mentioned, we need to look internally now. What then are the soft things we need to do? And the first one is we must cultivate purposeful passion. Passion is the new currency of now. I keep saying that give money to a passionless individual and watch that person squander that money. But give ideas to a passionate person, a purposeful, selfless individual, and see how he turns those ideas into money. We must therefore inspire one another to become passionate. It is that flame inside us that burns in whatever thing that we do, that we get up in the morning, because money will get finished, but your passion will never ever go anywhere, but it will bring you money. We must then become fearless. When I talk about fearlessness here, I keep telling young people they must become fearless but not careless. Be fearless but never be careless. What does it mean? Be fearless in looking for solutions, in seizing opportunities, what I call stubborn opportunism. But at the same time, be respectful, be humble, learn, be teachable. But don't think that because you are up there, you will carry your shoulders and then you will abuse people. You are breaking and burning your own bridges. Be fearless but never be careless. And the third one is master yourself. The first person to control is yourself. Learn. Be obedient. Regardless of what you go through, set goals and be focused and never stop making plans. Do not stop working hard. Fail, but learn from failure. If you don't start, you will not fail. If you don't fail, you will not learn. If you don't learn, you will not know. And if you don't know, then you get missing. You can never change. And the last part is to shun false narratives. I will take a minute here. We must shun false narratives. There is profound power in a narrative. There is profound power in a narrative because prevailing narratives are what shapes people's thinking. Prevailing narratives shape thinking. They shape strategies. And if we ignore it for just a minute, we will lose a lot of opportunities. Prevailing narrative shapes thinking. It shapes perspectives. And because of this, why I brought this up today is because if we ignore this, then we will be undermining a very important aspect sometimes to embrace things without questioning in a very thoughtful and critical way. Like an iconic genius Albert Einstein said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Across the continent today, Africans are presented sometimes as people who are too poor. We are not poor. We're just not adding value and understanding that we need to turn our challenges to opportunity and standing up to showcase that we can be responsible. Leadership is personal responsibility. And we must become leaders, selfless leaders. We must become values-based leaders. And each and every one of us, regardless of where we are, have to portray that so that we become the benchmark to inspire others. It therefore means if we do not shun this false narrative, when we hear narratives like Africa is too poor to develop, I say Africa is too rich to be poor. That should be the narrative as we get to action. None of us, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, is too small or big to contribute to the solutions process. Each and every one of us here today, regardless of which part of the world we are from, hold a piece of the solution to the challenges we face as a continent. We hold a piece, and the reality of now compels us to all become solution providers, because the prevailing emergencies over time present us with few alternatives. We must embrace bold collective actions like this conference has showcased, remembering the intrinsic truth of the African proverb that says there are only three friends on earth: courage, sense, and insight. Because in the mid-1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, as the clamor for self-determined rule took center stage, it reached fever pitch, self-appointed men and women in the continent arose from nowhere and fought for self-determined rule. During that time, they espoused boldness. They did not stand and say, no, we don't get enough money. No, we cannot get up. I was born in a very poor home, so I cannot act. They didn't say that. They didn't postpone that for a day, hoping for elusive perfection. They did what was needed to be done at the time, and today, what we have seen in this conference here today is that solutions have been preferred. What we are seeing here is that it is our part, our turn to play our role, because every succeeding generation have always faced a challenge. But what people have done is that they roll off their sleeves to do what is needed to be done at the time. That is what our founding fathers did, and that is what we must do today. They did what was needed at the time. We must therefore engage with boldness, with the singularity of unity of purpose, knowing fully well that the ones who want to lift a rock start by lifting stones. We must start by lifting stones of successes and bringing them together so that at least tomorrow we can lift a mountain. This African proverb is your marching orders for you to become purposeful, passionate, responsible solution providers that Africa urgently needs today. If there is anything I've said which you will not want to remember, please remember these few words: that you are the best. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please one more time, can we put our hands together for Dr. Richard? That was quite an amazing presentation and quite a marathon as well. And this is quite impressive. I would like to ask if anybody has questions or comments. We can take some few before we go up for our next item on the agenda. Any questions? Any comments? All right. So I'd like Dr. Richard to please come forth still so that he can respond to that as quickly as possible. Okay, the name, organization, and...
Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Oluwole Banjo from University of Lagos. I want to appreciate our last speaker. That is a revolution. Thank you so much. And this is what I've been asking everybody, everywhere I go. What are we doing in research in Nigeria and in Africa? I just Googled it out now, and I saw that Nigeria is the highest producer of cassava in the world. What are we doing with it? What are we doing? He has just told us 300 products from cassava. And I begin to wonder, why is Central Bank not doing a special target on cassava rather than rice? Cassava, where we have comparative advantage. Every world takes its comparative advantage. Why is, I wish somebody from CBN or from Federal Ministry of any of the agencies concerned is here to tell us something about it. Cassava, solar energy. Why are we not doing something about it in Africa? Most of our research is always focused, well, maybe because they are the financier, the outside world. I think it is time we start doing research based on our indigenous Nigeria, indigenous Africa. Find out our problem and how to provide local solution to them. It is very important. I want to see a Nigeria where if there is a problem, the whole world will be begging because we cannot give them cassava. Rather than when Ukraine is having problem, like Ukraine is having problem now, the whole world is in problem because of cereal. The whole world should be begging because both food and industrial materials, everything can come out from cassava. So please, this body, there's a body of knowledge here. I'm appealing, like he has said, let us look inward in our research work.
All right.
It is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, can you put your hands together for him? Any other comments or questions? I'm going to let Dr. Munang react or respond to that comment.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doc, for that. I think that was a comment, right? So I don't really have to respond. But what I need to say is one thing, which is we need to appreciate progress. I think, Mr. Moderator, I can stand and answer it here, right? Because it's a conversation.
Yeah, you can.
Let's make it informal rather than formal. If we do not appreciate progress, we can never make progress. And I think when you look at the continent, you brought a very important point. When you look at the continent, I think we do not appreciate the progress we have made. Is it enough? No, if it was enough, then why are we here? Generally, the way life is set up is that you can do as much, but there will always be challenges. You think you've reached the top of the mountain, but we are not moving at the pace in which we are supposed to move because the many challenges we have are disguised opportunities. Why I said that is because I want to learn. Nigeria is the first country in the entire world that came up with the cassava bread policy. In the entire world. I'm not talking in Africa, in the entire world. And what did that policy? It put in place that every bread produced must have 20% of cassava in it. The question is, how can we leverage on that and take it forward as other African countries benchmark and learn on that? That's progress. Because if you do not acknowledge what is there, it means you don't believe that anything can be done, and that is where the false narrative that I mentioned start to come in. Oh, they cannot do it. No, Africans cannot do it. No, I don't think we need knowledge from everywhere in the world, but it must benchmark on what we have. And that's something that I strongly believe in, and I will articulate it in every policy space that I have the opportunity to do. Then the indigenous knowledge, thank you very much. We have droughts across Africa. For those of you who have gone to Australia, I mean, it's a drought-prone country, but do they suffer from food insecurity and all that? Why don't we ask ourselves, why don't they suffer from that? Because they tap into what they have to use the systems they have. Africa, we have the Zai indigenous technique in the Sahel, in Burkina Faso, that has proven to help crop produce over 500%. But you go to public spaces where there is serious policy discussion, you never hear about this. You hear about stories that sometimes don't add up. So what am I trying to say? It is us to take the responsibility to use the spaces we have to be bold enough to speak what is needed to touch lives. Not talking politics, but talking solutions that can touch the lives of our mothers. Because I think we get easily engulfed in talking about sound bites rather than talking about what can touch the life of a mother, of a brother and a sister in a community. So thank you very much. Please, if you have questions, let's, because we have to round this up. I think the moderator is so excited that I didn't use all the 1 hour.
Oh, no, well, it's interesting. I mean, Dr. Munang, you're one of the people who I've met here that I'm very much, I've gained so much from. Your passion is very infectious, not infectious disease. You know, it's something that helps us to think, and that is very important. And then the point of all of this is obviously, I mean, if we were in a university setting, these are courses that would have gone back with credits to our grades, you know, so we don't take any of this for granted. Ladies and gentlemen, any other comments or any other questions? We have a little time for that. All right, if there is none, Dr. Mulang, with your kind permission, I'm going to close this section. Please, can we put our hands one more time for him? Well, sometimes I really wonder what actually happens to the cassava bread or the cassava bread. I mean, is it, as the case might be. But Nigerians themselves have to wake up to that reality. Like you've rightly said, if the war in Ukraine is putting the whole world, in a really bad situation in terms of grains or cereals, you can imagine if we have not just a comparative advantage, but the leadership role in that regard. A lot of what we'll be talking about, perhaps we won't be talking about it today. Like you rightly said, Africa is not poor. We're not poor. It's just some of the narratives that has been used to define who we are. If Africa was poor, I imagine this kind of international conference, we won't have over 20 countries represented, both in Africa and outside Africa. There are a lot of opportunities here, and you can imagine the fact that our chief host is still sitting to this point for the 3 days. Please put your hands together for him. This is amazing. Not to sound as if I'm patronizing him, but I'll be honest, this is the first time I've seen a government official, not just a government official at a mid-level, he is in the cabinet, that has sat through the 3 whole days for the conference. And he was here yesterday night, for the award. It's amazing. It's amazing. I don't know if he has any biological, medical sources that he uses to have enough energy to sit in for 3 days and all of that, so I might have to consult him in that regard. So that by the time I get to his age and level, I'll be looking as good as he is looking, and of course with all the strength to sit for 3 good days. It's amazing. Please, one more time, can we put our hands together for him? And particularly, I would like to recognize the man who gave me the shoes to wear for the moment, as the case might be, and his commendation has been huge. I understand it was a presidential candidate as well, and that is Dr. Adesina Fagbinro Byron. Please, can you put your hands together for him? I can't see him anywhere, but I would like us to make sure that he knows I've given him this due acknowledgement. These are men that have been very fortunate to be associated with as a result of the African Conference on One Health and Biosecurity. And I'm so excited because my eyes have been opened to so many things that I never imagined existed in this country. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's not waste this. Let's not waste this. Research is too key. I know one of the speakers mentioned, why do the developed world invest so much in R&D? That is what will give you a leading place in the Committee of Nations. Knowledge is power, and I'm glad that this age of digitalization has given us certain kinds of platform to leapfrog, even if we know that the word leapfrog is somewhat debatable, but we have that opportunity, and we have the talents, we have the skills. I think somebody said yesterday that it's not the lack of skills, that is our own concern. Perhaps it's even far more than that. And together, through collaboration, we can make a whole lot of difference in strengthening health security and mitigating biological threats in Africa. And so, ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, I would like to quickly invite every one of us to go into our separate breakout session. And I'm very sure this breakout session is not going to take more than 30, 45 minutes. And then we're going to come back here for the communique and then any other announcements. And then I'm very sure we'll close the conference. So our facilitators are already on ground. Drassa Health Trust downstairs for the infection prevention and control training. Why here, I think we had, what did we have here? NIPSA, if I remember I saw Doctor here. We're looking at biosafety and biosecurity training too. And downstairs we have the introduction to data management by START Consultants, Consult International. I understand we'll be giving certificates. Dr. Dotu, I hope I'll get my own certificate too, in case I want to apply for a job at the Ministry of Health, Lagos State. I can claim that I have some credits, because I can't sit down here for 3 days and my whole head is just, all I'm just thinking is biosecurity, bioethics, all of that. So that's to tell you that, even me myself, the knowledge has been imputed in me by association. So ladies and gentlemen, please, can you put your hands together for the new biosecurity communicator expert? Myself, put your hands together for that, yeah. If care is not taken, I will just tell my guys behind to put up my slide. Let me guys give you some, some of those knowledge I've gained from the professors in the house and the rest of this amazing. This is a room full of power. You can feel it. If you can't sense it, perhaps you must be living somewhere else. But man, this is amazing. This is amazing. I really am very proud to be a part of the 8th edition. And then I'm looking forward to when we have the communique so that some other areas will be taken care of. Now, so ladies and gentlemen, for the next 30, 45 minutes, please can we go downstairs if you are for the IPC downstairs and the data management, why biosafety and security remains in the hall, just like we did on Wednesday. Yes, thank you very much. DJ EY. Where's Dr. the facilitator? Sir, over to you. You're the one in charge here. Why the rest of the people will have to be downstairs? Drasta is waiting, and Start Consult is also waiting. 35, 45 minutes, we'll wrap up, and we are back here for the communique, and then any other announcement will call the event closed.
What am I looking for? Say my God, it don't mess me up.
I said you are now biosaturated. Yeah, thank you, Stephen, for transferring to me the power of the microphone for the next 30 to 45 minutes, as he said. May I request that the power base displays the slides that we have for today, beginning from that of the first day. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies to the cameras. I would like to do it walking around, like I said. Group 4 table has been decimated to only one member. Okay, yes. Please, can we assume our positions again in the respective groups? And I welcome my special assistant, emergency assistant trainer this session. Chinelo, welcome. All right, so I'm told that we need to bear with the organizers. Can we please roll it to the next one, because here we have just fundamentals. Please go on. Okay, please, just one back. I just want us to note this, that it is important for us to know what we want to learn, to feel good about what we set out to learn, and to be able to carry out. Okay. Thank you. And to be able to carry out. Okay, thank you very much. Please, I've been confined to the podium by the cameramen for special reasons. So, thank you. Now, we had gone through this on Wednesday, if you recall, and we have also gone through the definitions. Apologies if you didn't get it with us. But essentially, you will see that here we're talking about laboratory biosafety as containment principles, technologies, and practices implemented to prevent unintentional exposure to pathogens and toxins, or preventing their unintentional release. And we also defined laboratory biosecurity the last time. And these definitions are based on the World Health Organization Laboratory Biosafety Manual, 4th edition, as well as the Biosecurity Guidance document that we have. Okay. So we also went through this exercise. I am just trying to revise what we covered by Wednesday. And by so doing, we try to bring up the recency of our knowledge. Now we ask what is risk? And so this is about what is biorisk. And this is to say that it is a risk associated with biological materials. So biorisk is actually biorisk is obtained from a combination of biosafety and biosecurity risk. So if you want to be mathematical, you can maintain the bio, cancel safety, cancel security, and it becomes biorisk. All right? But the two actually means a combination of biosafety and biosecurity risk. So we also went through this, and then we went through the basic components of biorisk management as biorisk assessment, biorisk mitigation, and then biorisk management performance. And we said that leads us to the AMP model, assessment, mitigation, and performance. All right. And that is a gold standard model for determining biorisk management in the laboratories. All right. Now, here we are talking about, I didn't show us this on Wednesday, so it's important for us to just quickly go through this. And here is to show that we have important elements of a management system, and that includes the top management, the planning, establishment, and objectives, and then we have training and staff awareness as well as documentation. And that all of these team up together, and they are connected and interconnected with communication, because somebody must pass some information to somebody else, and there is going to be a feedback, or there is going to be action that will follow the information. So we spoke about laboratory biorisk management as a system or process to control safety and security risks that are associated with handling or storage and disposal of biological agents and toxins in laboratories and facilities. Now, I am making emphasis on laboratories this time around because we are talking about pathogens, that is, infectious agents in most cases. Those laboratories can as well be the environments where we find ourselves. So now, biorisk management standards, and what we are talking about, these standards and regulations, is actually that they are guidance documents that may not really be legally binding, but they guide us in our various biosafety and biosecurity practices, and that they are used by countries who lack their own national guidelines. But even in countries where they do not lack their guidance, if they have their guidance documents, it is expected that the guidance document will not contravene what is internationally applicable. All right. And then we should note that the guidance documents also address valuable biological materials. It is very important to take note of that. Okay. So some of these, I have gone ahead to display them. They include the CEN workshop agreement, which, of course, had been in existence up to, I think we have up to 2011 version. It is the CEN, is Central European Network Workshop Agreement. So we call it CWA 15793. And then, okay, that gave way for ISO 35001 for biorisk management, which is about biorisk management for laboratories and other related organizations. So the standard can be used by all, can be used for all these purposes and more, including improving overall laboratory biorisk performance, increasing awareness of safety and biosecurity. You can also take it as far as improving international laboratory collaboration and safety harmonization. Now that is an ISO document, 35001, indicates that it actually derives its authority from the International Standards Organization. So it has global applicability. All right. So we also have the Laboratory Biosafety Manual. I mentioned it before, by WHO. This is the 4th edition. the hard copy of this is not quite available, although we have the soft copy. It's, of course, published in 2020 in the heat of the COVID-19 outbreak. So if it's not really much in circulation for now, you understand why. But you can download it freely from the WHO website, who.int. Okay, so we also have the laboratory biosecurity guidance document, which is also displayed here. And this, of course, draws us through, in many cases, of biosecurity. That's why we took our biosecurity definition from that document. One of our presenters today, you notice, actually displayed the WHO International Health Regulation, all right? But there is an aspect that is the section 8 of that document that actually deals with biosafety in laboratories and environments. And that is where I have brought out this aspect. Of course, it's a World Health Organization document, so it also has global relevance and applicability. Then we have the World Organization for Animal Health, which also has published and circulated Manual of Diagnostic Tests and Vaccines for terrestrial animals with copious sections on biosafety in particular, some of which I have excerpted and displayed beside the image of the document. Now, the much emphasis will be laid on the CWA 15793 because it had been in circulation for a much longer time, and it is what many laboratory practitioners are expected actually to have. But now that we have ISO 35001, it is gradually also being replaced by the ISO document. All right? Now, it is important for us to take note that because the ISO 35001 actually replaced the CWA 15793, all of these sections that we have, especially that we have on display, is also available in the ISO 35001, even in more elaborate form. So what we have here is actually a summary, or what you like, or if you like, the skeleton of the major sections that you have there. It deals in the section 4, for example, on general requirements for biosafety, as you see, even up to checking and corrective actions, as well as reviewing the whole section. But the thrust of the section is on assessment, mitigation, and performance, which we mentioned is what forms the AMP model for biorisk management. Okay, so we can continue on and on, but it is important for us to take note that in the CWA 15793, the document describes what needs to be achieved in our various setups where we operate. It allows organizations to determine how best to achieve these objectives. And of course, it is not a technical document. So it does not go into the nitty-gritty of your instrumentation or procedures that are taken in the laboratory or in the field for working with biological materials. What it only does, therefore, is to highlight in different sections and subsections what is expected of you as an individual in your position in your facility, and then what is expected of different strata of your organizational arrangement. All right? For example, it states in section 44453 about waste management. This is just an example. That the organization shall establish and maintain an appropriate waste management policy for biological agents and toxins. In other words, it states quite outrightly that it is not negotiable for an organization not to have a policy on waste management. So if there is no policy on waste management, we know that the top management is failing in its responsibilities. If they have the policy and yet things are not working, both the top management and those that are responsible for generating and disposal of the waste are the ones to now get questioned. All right. So this is what about the ISO 35001, and I'm not going to dwell much on it, but it dwells on the PDCA cycle. It dwells on the PDCA. It says, plan. Yes, plan, you will do, you will check, and then you will act. That is PDCA cycle, and that is how it goes on and on in biorisk management. And these are the topics that are covered in the document, all right? So, yes, I see that some of us are grappling to take snapshots of the slides. But I have requested, and I hope my request will be granted, that the organizers of this program can PDF the files that I've given them because they're in PowerPoint and circulate to all those who are registered for this course. So that, thank you very much, so that you can get back and review whatever you have missed in the class. And of course, if you still need to sort out some other things, you can always contact me. All right. Now, of course, it is an international approach. Now, these graphs are very important. I couldn't display them, but that I described that risk is a function of probability of an undesirable event happening and the consequence that comes from it. And this is represented by these graphs. So when you combine the probability of the occurrence and what happens if it occurs, then the risk can be categorized as low, medium risk, high risk, or even very high risk. And that is what we have as displayed by isoquants in the colored graph. All right? So we cannot go into the details of that. I wanted these scenarios to be given to us so that each one of us can go through them, through the scenario and, you know, solve the problems that comes from it. But we don't have the luxury of paper and time in respect of this. So you can go through it, but this is a scenario of an hypothetical situation that happened at Cataract University. Now, it's about a mill that works in a level 2 facility. I cannot go through the details, but if you get your slides, you can go through it and then understand it better. It is to let us see how we can solve biosafety issues that arises in our various facilities. Okay, so these are the questions that we will have gone through in the exercise and I will thank you that we have finished the review of that section. Can we have the next slide, please? The 2 slides, please. No, please. Okay. I think it's now led for me. All right. Oh, okay. Fundamentals of a biorisk management system. Okay, so this is what we would have gone through yesterday, but because we had to compress the program, so that's why you see it is labeled at the 3rd November. Now, this is a section on implementing a biorisk management system. We go through these same rubrics, just as we have said, but let's look at risk assessment basics. Okay, now we have to take note that a biological risk assessment has to be done in our facility from time to time, depending on organisms that we are handling or what we encounter in our work. If you even did one yesterday and the organism you are handling today is different from the one yesterday, you have to carry out another biorisk assessment of that particular organism. I noted that the police officer representing the office of the DIG, of the Inspector General of Police, mentioned at the time that if we could imagine having Ebola, for example, in the hands of Boko Haram. Now, it means, therefore, that if you are working on Ebola as a lab worker, you have to conceptualize that from time to time. And so it demands that you carry out a biosafety and biosecurity assessment of the work you are doing without Ebola virus, okay? So I would also say that, to put it in perspective, a biological risk assessment is an analytical process. It is designed for us to put character to every biological risks that we have in the facility. That facility, I said, it could be a laboratory unit, either within or without an enclosure, or any other type of operation dealing with pathogens or their toxins. So it means, therefore, that generally we carry out biosafety risk assessment and biosecurity risk assessment from time to time. Because what you think is not of interest to one group can be of interest to another group, with a view to get it to some bad guys who will get it to the street and use it for purposes other than what you are using it for. So this is just also defining a biosafety risk assessment as a procedure designed to characterize risks that you have in the laboratory, and this is for biosecurity, okay? We said the biorisk assessment must be very robust. That means everybody who is involved with the work must participate in it, and we must look at various dimensions of the procedure that we are taking along with the pathogen. It means that in all of this, the pathogen characteristics is of extreme importance for us to consider when we are carrying out a biological risk assessment. For example, you want to determine this organism, what is the virulence? You want to determine, is it a percutaneous action that it takes? That is, it can have action through the skin. You want to think, is it a respiratory thing? Perhaps maybe it forms spores, and the spores can be easily, can be easily put into the atmosphere, and you inhale through the nose, and it gets to the respiratory system. You want to think about, can it be ocular in action? Does it go into action through the eyes? And so on and so forth. So this is very, very important. Then you want to note, what is the kind of disease that is produced? Then what is the mortality rate, for example, if it gets into the body system? Then you want to determine, are there mitigation measures already in existence? For example, do you have vaccines that have been produced for such? So when you do all of this together, what you are actually carrying out is a biorisk assessment. You want to think about who can be interested in destroying the particular facility where you are working, or who can be interested to come and steal what you are working with. All these are involved in biosafety and biosecurity risk assessment. So the question is, why do we have to carry it out? Why do we have to carry out a biosecurity or a biosafety risk assessment? I will have asked us one-on-one, but because I'm conscious of time, I don't want Stephen to come and drive us out of here before we finish our presentations. But this is the answer. A biological risk assessment allows us to be able to determine the relative level of risk that its different activities would pose to us, and to help us, guide us to develop mitigation measures against the events that might occur. So here we come to definition of risk, which we already went through, if you remember. Okay, so we say risk is the likelihood of an undesirable event happening that involves specific hazard or threat and has consequences. You remember that I emphasized on Wednesday that if the hazard is there, or in the case of biosecurity, if the threat is there and there is no situation, then there can be no consequence. But if both of them are there, that is, you have the hazard or threat, and then there is a situation that makes it happen, then we can be talking about risk. Okay? So risk, therefore, is a function of likelihood and consequence. Function of likelihood and consequence. Now, let me share with us that the likelihood, yes, it can happen 100 times in a day. If the consequence is low, the risk can only be low. And it can occur only once in 100 years. If the consequence is high, the risk is high. So it means that the major determinant of the risk is the consequence. It's not a matter of how many times it can happen. It's a matter of when it happens, what do we lose? If we lose life, then the risk is high. Or you can say very high. Are you with me? I hope we are on the same page. Thank you. I have a scenario that I would have loved to show us. All of these are just putting emphasis to the things that we have mentioned earlier. Now, I have this scenario here. You are faced in an open field next to a hungry tiger. It is very aggressive. The tiger is unrestrained and sees you as food. What is the risk of being faced with that tiger? I'm sure you are still going to say very, very high. Okay. Okay. You said it is like that. But can we look at the third scenario there? It says you are holding a tiger. It is a cub, that is the baby of a tiger, with a playful temperament in your arms. What is the risk? We still have our groups, eh? Okay. Okay, so group 3. Oh, sorry, group 4. Can you attempt this? Yes. Okay. Is that your final answer? The risk is very high. Why do you say the risk is very high? Let me give you a hint. We said it can happen 100 times. Okay, it's playful, right? You now understand. Okay, who can still help us? But it's a tiger cub. That is a tiger cub. Does it mean it cannot attack you? It's playful. Okay. Okay. Then it can. Now, what I actually want to pick from our contributions is that you consider what is the likelihood that an attack happens, and then you consider what is the consequence that will be if that attack happens. Now, let me break it down for us. The tiger cub, whether it is playful or is not playful. Don't forget, a tiger cub can still kill a small animal. But you are holding it in your hand, and it's playful. Now, if you look at the image there, Your hand is even in his mouth. Let me tell you, characteristically, the tiger cub is actually attacking you through your hand. Don't forget, he did not say it does not have teeth. So, so he's going to be using the teeth to scratch your hand, even if the teeth are not strong enough. It means that the probability that the tiger cub will attack you is high. But then let us see what is the consequence. The consequence, will it lead to injury? If it will lead to injury, what kind of injury? Minor injury. Can the injury heal or not? Can the injury be treated or not? That means there are mitigation measures already. Then the next thing, can it kill? Can it kill you? Don't forget, it's playful. And it's playing with you by attacking you. It's not different from if you are having a dog puppy, the puppy of a dog. It will continue to nibble at your hand and on and on. But the injury is very low, if at all there is any. All right? So it means that the consequence is low. Therefore, to solve this, the risk of being faced with that kind of tiger cub is low. Okay, thank you. The risk is low. So I have all these scenarios there. And of course, this is another one. Yes? Okay. Yes? Okay, but at that age, you think the tiger cub can have, there is likelihood of a disease. Okay, now in this case, we are not told about that. So you stick by what you know about it. Thank you. Now this is in a zoo. It is a mellow tiger cub. It's located behind a strong glass, and then the glass has a window. What is the risk of being faced with this tiger? What is the likelihood first? What is the consequence? So the risk on the long run is low. But always remember, risk is a function of likelihood and consequence. Thank you. So I would like to fly through all of this because it's just further buttressing and making us to understand better what we have just considered. Now, this is the risk assessment strategy of any organism you are working with, in which case you first describe the work activities, identify the hazards, determine the risks, as we have just done, all right? And then when you determine the risk, you can decide whether or not the risk is acceptable. For example, you can determine whether you still want to be holding a tiger cub, especially after you have had what Officer Kingsley had just told us, that it's possible it has rabies. Do you still want to hold the tiger cub? And then, if your answer is yes, you proceed with the work, but if it is no, you revise the project or you close it entirely. All right. Okay, you will see, you can study this more when you get, I've been warned that we have only 10 minutes, and out of that the 10 minutes, I've already spent 2 minutes. That is why I'm just flying through. So now we can go on to risk characterization. Risk characterization is just an advanced step on risk assessment. That after we have done the risk assessment, can we now characterize the risk? Can we now group it into different categories? Okay, that is what these slides are talking about. You see, it says risk characterization, part of this process is the identification of the appropriate hazard or risk. The hazard or threat is the source or causative agent of a particular risk. The term hazard is used in the biosafety context, and threat is in the context of biosecurity. Okay? Let's just fly past. This is about biosecurity. Okay, I hope you didn't see that bad guy. Okay, we will have gone through this scenario, but time will not permit. It is about Mycobacterium tuberculosis, so that we will, this is about the virus, no, it's a bacterium that we are dealing with when you want to conduct a drug sensitivity test. It's a short scenario, so you can just go through that at your spare time. For you to identify the hazard, what is the likelihood of the exposure, what are the consequences of the exposure. That is when we come to the theory of Kingsley. All right. And this is another scenario. These are scenarios that we should actually have been doing, but for time. Okay, so we can go on through risk characterization, and I want us to go to mitigation strategies. I have a video that we will have played. I'm not sure they'll be able to give you that video, except if, oh, okay, you're already going to the third one. Fine. Oh, okay. They're already playing the video for us. Yes, please play it. Monsters Incorporated. Okay, but okay, now you are playing it.
Hey, Wazowski, nice job. Those numbers are pretty sweet.
Are they? You know, I hadn't even noticed. And how is Georgie doing?
He's doing great. I love working with that big guy.
Keep the doors coming, Charlie. I'm on a roll today.
George and I are like brothers. 2319! We have a 2319!
Red alert. Red alert. Red alert.
George Sanderson, please remain motionless. Prepare for decontamination.
Duck and cover, people!
Oh, not the CDA.
Coming through, please. Clear the contaminated area. Into the 2319 project. The area clear. Coming through. Watch yourself. Stand back. Careful. All clear. Situation is 990. Ready for decon.
Hey, thanks, guys. That was a close one.
Okay.
Okay, people, take a break. We got to shut down for a half hour and reset the system.
Okay, so we got.
floor out of commission. What else can go wrong?
Thank you. Please, you can cut it. Yes, it says we have to shut down to reset the system. Now, what has just happened in that scenario is a situation where you have someone who came into the facility with a coded pathogen. He announced that we got a 2319, right? That pathogen was already eating deep into the skin, and then they had to stop everything, have a lockdown in the facility until the monster was rid of the pathogen. And then he himself, of course, he was confined, and then there was decontamination of the spots of infection, and then they closed down the system to reset. Thank you very much, operator. So we can continue. What we have just seen there is that there was mitigation steps, several mitigation steps put in place there. For example, the rescue team could come in through the upper part of the facility. Secondly, they had their PPEs on. Thirdly, they came with full complements of the equipment that they can use to decontaminate the system over there. And of course, everyone in the system was immobilized. Lastly, you noted that there was an alarm system. Until we had the alarm system in Nigeria, we didn't know COVID-19 had entered into us. All right, so that is about mitigation. There was a mitigation system that was put in place there. So that is where I will just continue here. It says, why is it important to conduct a risk assessment? It is because you must conduct a risk assessment so that you can put in place effective mitigation measures. If you are not able to carry out a robust risk assessment, there will still be leakages in between. And that can be disastrous for the facility and for the human resources that you have there. Okay. Sorry, we will not be able to go through the icky virus scenario, but this is also a very important scenario, very interesting too. Please go through it after you have received your files. So these are the various mitigation control measures: elimination, substitution, engineering controls, administrative controls, practice and procedures, personal protective equipment. All of these, we saw them in that video. All right. Okay, these are just stating the advantages and disadvantages of each one of them. And it's showing us that the PPE is the least effective of all the mitigation controls. This is the hierarchy of the controls. It states that the most effective is elimination or substitution. That is, you completely avoid it, or if you can replace with another procedure or another agent, then you can go on. All right. So here I have about the last days for this particular day. It says, car safety is all about engineering systems, but Okada safety is all about PPE. I'm sure we understand what you mean by Okada in Nigeria. Okay. So even if it is Korope, it is all about engineering system. And then if it is, if it's Kakena Pep, you understand? But I don't want to consider that. Sorry. No safety. Okay. I thank you for your participation. Please go to the third one so that we wrap it up with performance. Okay. Okay, no, please remove this video. Just go to the last day there. I think I labeled it as day 3 because I prepared the training sessions for day 1, Wednesday, day 2, Thursday, and day 3, Friday. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, we are now on day 3, 4th of November. This is about roles, responsibilities, and authorities for biorisk management. These are actually set out in the CWA 15793 as well as the ISO 35001. Who is responsible for what? If you do not recognize roles, you cannot put in place a biorisk management system. And if there is no personnel that is for a particular role, you cannot have an effective biorisk management system. And I think that is the whole message that we want to pass in this section. All right. How is the system performing? Is what we are dealing with here. Biorisk management system performance is the way in which a biorisk management system actually performs to manage or minimize biorisk. If performance is not part of what you have put in place in your biorisk management system, it is not complete. Reason, you will not have completed the AMP. All right? I don't like looking at this car most of the time. It reminds me of Mr. Bean. Do you remember Mr. Bean? Okay, his car is always small like this, as if it's toy. But, but whether it's a small car or it's a big car, do all cars perform in the same way? And then can you not see signs that a car is not performing well? You can get to the car one morning and the car, you do, how many times it still will not start? But if you are lucky, after the about fifth time, when you think your battery has already been exhausted, it will just come on. All right. There are various other signs. For example, the vehicle might be going with a jerky movement, isn't it? All right. So these are some of the things also that you look for when you have put in place a biorisk management system. Is the system performing well? If it is not performing well, what aspect of the system is not performing well? I don't want to go through these details because Mr. Stephen will soon come for the microphone. Can we just please go to the video? There is a second video there. Please, let's look at the video. Control tower, please. You see now, I mentioned his name and he just strolled into the hall. Can you locate the video so that we can wrap up with that video? It's a 2-minute video. You can't get it? Okay. So we will continue. We can get it in our files. All right? It's a video that shows us how a fully automated system actually cracked in between, and the intruder was able to walk into the facility. Now, that is to show us that a system that we have been using over time soon have lapses. And these are the same things that we show in this. I hope my pointer has not been deactivated. Okay, thank you. It's now working. It's always good to cry out for help. So now I was going to show us that these are the same things that we are talking about. With increasing time of usage, there are holes that build up in the system. Because you have biorisk management performance in place in the system, you can detect where the holes have built up, and then you can rectify the holes. All right. So this is the last thing I want to talk about. There are ways to measure performance. You can audit the whole system or sections of the system that are affected. You can look for performance indicators, whether the system is not starting in good time, and so on and so forth. You can make observations. You can carry out interviews with those who are supposed to be running the system, with every member of the personnel that you have. And then you can carry out surveys and then use questionnaires. All right. So let me just show this for us to see how the graphs moves, and then we will close. Please keep looking at the ball as it is dropping, and then the arrows that will come after. Likelihood and consequences activated. Now this is a three-dimensional image. And then you see that the likelihood from the red ball has come down because there has been performance. Look at it. Individual mitigation steps have been introduced, and that is improving the performance of the system. All right. Okay. So you see from red, the ball dropped to yellow, and now it is turning to green because mitigation measures are put in place. I want to thank you for listening. And thank you, Mr. Stephen, for cooperating with us.
It's my certificate, too. Because I attended a biosafety workshop or training, as the case is. Thank you so very much, Doc. Please, can you put your hands together for him? I didn't know you were a fan of Monster Incorporated. That's one animation that I like so very much. It actually teaches a lot in terms of leadership and otherwise. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that the rest of us have come upstairs, and we want to say a big thank you for your time. But quickly, I would like to call on my sponsors. These are people who made this so possible as they come in to make a very brief comment and presentation, so to speak, to let you guys know what they have to offer and how you can take an advantage of their services. First and foremost, I would like to invite Kachi. Is Kachi here? Kachi? All right, please, could somebody help me get my sponsors, Let me have Kachi. If Kachi is not here, can I have Biologics? Biologics. Biologics, okay. Peter and Jane. Peter and Jane. Inkaba, where's Inkaba? Inkaba Biotech. Their turn has passed. Except they beg me specially. Okay, now I feel good. Right, please put your hands together for Kachi as they come to make their presentation for the next 3 to 5 minutes more or less because of time. It's a weekend. Thank God it's Friday, they say. But there's no better way to end a weekend like this than being in a place of this nature, gaining insights and all. Thank you.
Good evening, standing on the existing protocol. This is Kachi Company Limited. We are distributors for Thermo Fisher. We have a representative of Thermo Fisher here to do the presentation, Dr. James. The slides, they should have it.
So, good afternoon. Good evening, sorry. It feels as if we're still in the morning, you know. So my name is Ayorinde James. For those who know me, they know me more in the research space. So I have here with me from Thermo Fisher, Jumoke and Stanley. Aside from being a scientist, I also work as a business development manager for Thermo Fisher West Africa. So what's our contribution for this conference? We've listened to quite a number of speakers, and we've learned quite a lot of things about biosecurity. And we know that during the last pandemic, almost everybody knew how to run, real-time PCRs, and we had them everywhere. But we are preparing for another next X that we don't know, and we need to, look forward to a newer technology that could be more sensitive, than real-time PCR, and that's why we would like to talk about digital PCR assays this evening. Some people will be wondering, oh, they are here to sell new products. No, it's not about products, selling new products. It's about talking about new technology, because we need to keep improving the sensitivity of the technologies we are using. If you look at the next slide, please. Do I have an opportunity to? Okay. So this is the picture we have almost every part of the world now. And while I was looking at this slide this evening, something came to my mind that if I ask every person here what new emerging pathogen could come out from this, scenario, a lot will keep, coming up, blowing up in our minds. I have a bias for virology, so I'm thinking about rotavirus. Some people might be thinking about hepatitis E virus. There is this funny bacteria that is, or bacterium, funny, that causes melioidosis, Bocodera pseudomalae. Not very common, but now that we have this scenario almost in most parts of the world, we should begin to see how we can improve sensitivity. Yes, we can use qPCRs, to detect some of these pathogens. But some of these pathogens are very, very difficult to detect using some of the existing technologies that we have. So that's why we are presenting it's not new, but we need to be prepared that there is something more sensitive than qPCR. And that's why we are presenting digital PCR. And in this technology, it's like the same qPCR, other than we make droplets of each of the nucleic acids you have in the tube. And each of those droplets are partitioned into different chambers. And what I mean by that is, unlike in normal qPCR, as we are walking through the door, you're counting the amount of nucleic acids, right? And you can say this is the copy numbers, this is the CT number of the COVID test. But now, we don't want to count, as we're coming real time through the door, we want to partition all the nucleic acids into different segments, as we have in this hall, and we can begin to test each segment, and that helps us improve our sensitivity, and that brings us to, another mode of analysis where we have rainfalls, in most of our analyses, and it's very, very sensitive to some of the things we are looking at. Well, some people have used it for cancer research because it's good for detecting very minor allele frequencies that are very, very, not very common, very scarce. Some people are using it for gene therapy, for the AAVs that are now for lots of gene therapies, and more importantly, for SARS-CoV-2 wastewater surveillance. Very useful. I was having a chat with someone yesterday, and I said, we were talking about how, water or waste effluent, untreated waste effluent in most, healthcare facilities were contaminated with SARS-CoV-2, and even to the point that we could sequence some of them in the lab. So it's very fast, simple, high quality, and this can quickly improve some of the turnaround time if you're doing testing that we are looking at. So we are looking at something that should be more cost-effective than qPCRs. Yes, that's a bit debatable, but in terms of quality, yep. In terms of sensitivity, very, very sensitive. In terms of time, very fast. And one good thing about it is that we discovered that when you have very high viral loads at times in qPCR, you have negative results, right? This is probably due to inhibitors from extraction processes or even some of the complex biological samples you're extracting from. But digital PCR is relatively, robust in such a way that it can accommodate some of these contaminants, and you still get your desired results that you're looking for. Thank you for making us part of this program, and we look forward to coming back next year so that we can discuss newer technologies for biosecurity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. It's impressive you wear two hats. And that is Kachi's presentation for you. Ladies and gentlemen, please, I would like to invite Biologics to please come up. Biologics, are you here? If Biologics is not here, going. All right, Biologics is not here, please. And then do we have Peter and Jane? Peter and Jane. Inkaba Biotech. Okay, can I please appeal to my team behind to kindly get the sponsors up so that we can save time. I'm very sure that people are eager to leave, and we want to close this session as quickly as we can. First and foremost, I want to say a big thank you to all of the sponsors. And I must say that at the 8th African Conference on One Health and Biosecurity with the theme, Strengthening Health Security and Mitigating Biological Threats in Africa, has been an amazing experience for me, as a matter of fact. And it's been a very wonderful, wonderful time out, as the case is. And as with every other thing we do in life, every good thing obviously comes to an end. And I want to thank the chairman, who is the executive governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and of course the chief host, Professor Akin Abayomi, the Honorable Commissioner for Health, Lagos State, as well as our hosts, Dr. Olusegun Ogboye, the Permanent Secretary, Lagos State Ministry of Health. Certainly our chief organizer, Dr. Dotun Bobadoye, the Chief Operating Officer of GET Consortium, and of course all our distinguished speakers who have made this a fantastic experience for us. And our facilitators, NIPSA, START Consort, and we also have DRASA, and of course Lagos State Ministry of Health for the partnership, for the support in one way or the other. We want to say a big thank you to a whole lot of you, and it's such an amazing, amazing experience for me. I've made new friends, and with all things being equal, hopefully with God giving us life, we probably will see again. But in the meantime, please, every single thing we've actually had today should not be thrown away or wasted. We have all of the slides, I understand, by the organizers will be communicated to every single participant. So let's be rest assured. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you because I know that some of the great friends we've made is going to be a friendship that is going to last a lifetime. And I'm glad I shook the hands of Dr. Abdurrahman, who was a survivor of the Ebola attack. I know that no pandemic can actually, get to me now because I'm even fortified. As doctor said, I'm even biosaturated, just anchoring this event for the past 3 days. It's been a wonderful privilege, as the case might be. So I wonder if my sponsors are here. If we don't call them up yet, they won't pay my fees in full, so I have to get them up. Biologics, are you here? Biologics is not here yet again. Peter and Jane in Kaba Biotech, SynLab, AFMS. AFMS is here. Okay. SynLab, all right. You are the one that was telling me when I had your time, and I was looking for you. For that reason, I'm giving you only 2 minutes. Come, who is that? Peter and Jane? Oh, my apologies. I've given you the wrong accusation. Aya, come. Peter and Jane, you were one of the award winners yesterday. So for the next, come. Oh, SynLab. Okay, you see the confusion. So no. SynLab. Yes, let them come in. We've been calling you guys. I give back the accusation. So it's important for the next 5 minutes.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this great opportunity that you have given to SynLab to be part of the sponsors. SynLab Nigeria belongs to the Global brand. We are in like 4 continents and in 36 countries. SynLab pride ourselves in excellence, quality result delivery, and going by what has been said since the 3 days that we've been talking about biosafety, how we can actually take lead from all the lectures from the beneficial effect of microorganisms to the detrimental effect of microorganisms. SynLab is always making sure that at every step of our procedures, at every step of our processes, those biological waste that can actually be detrimental to the health of Nigerians are disposed in the rightful manner. Then, talking about our area of specialty, we specialize in histopathology, cytology, microbiology. We also specialize in water testing, environmental testing, and in genetics, because one of the speakers actually talked about genome sequencing and using the genes of the microorganisms to either treat a particular disease or use it to inhibit the growth of a particular disease. SynLab pride itself in genetic testing from a very small PCR to even high-range molecular testing. There's a test we call MyPGX, whereby this is the kind of a full, whole genome sequencing for individuals to ascertain the type of nutritional, of the type of nutrients they have to take in, the type of exercise they need to get involved with, the type of medication, because most in Nigeria it is not all the diseases that actually, it is not all the fever that are actually malaria fever. Some malaria, some fever is actually from microorganisms and all that. So by the time we know the type of medication we need to take, we'll be able to live a healthy life. And SynLab Nigeria is here, making sure that the health of Nigeria is well managed through the individual, through doctors and what have you. And I can confidently tell us that SynLab is in that space, like we are actually the best in the medical diagnostic field in Nigeria, because we have the capacity to run more than 5,000 tests, as in more than 5,000 different tests in Nigeria. So as we go back to our various places of abode, from Lagos to Abuja to different parts of Africa, we are wishing us all a safe journey back home. And by the time we come back next year, we will be here giving us a feedback of how we have been able to come up with modern day technology to improve the health of Nigeria and Africa as a whole. Thank you so much.
Please put your hands one more time for SynLab. They have promised that they are going to be here again next year as one of the sponsors. This is good to know. Let's hear from Peter and Jane, please. Okay, I thought the two of you were going to come. You are Peter. Where's Jane? Okay, just you representing. This is a hermaphrodite situation. All right.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Permit me to stand on the existing protocol. Yeah, it's a great opportunity to speak on Peter and Jane and to showcase what we do at Peter and Jane. At Peter and Jane, we deal in life science equipment. We supply medical reagents, consumables, and molecular reagents. We also do after sale servicing. We supply the reagent. We supply the molecular. Then, since for 3 days now, we have been talking about biosecurity. At Peter and Jane, we are the major distributor of MGI products, where we supply sequencing machines and extraction machines. We have machines like, we have machine. We do the calibration, installation, and we do the validation. We also do consultation and training at Peter and Jane, and we do repair and end users and support. Then we have some automated systems such as extraction machines. We have machines for library preparation. We have sequencing machines. Like we have the sequencing machine that allow us to know the genetic makeup of organisms, so that we know the kind of strains of organisms that are in circulation when we do the sequencing. Yeah, we have some machines that help that do the sample transfer and processing, like MGISP 100, which can do both the extraction as well as library preparation for sequencing. Some of these machines are they are fast in the processing. They save time and energy. Like in a situation where like MGI 100, which can do the extraction of like 1 or 2 samples in less than 40 minutes. In which, if it is done manually, you spend like almost a day before you could get your 1 and 2 sample extracted and library prep. This is a MGISP NE32. These machines will extract 32 samples in less than 9 minutes. 32 samples in less than 9 minutes, which means for you to have your 1 and 2 sample, you have it in less than 30 minutes. 1 and 2 sample extracted in less than 30 minutes. That means when the 32 sample is extracted in 9 minutes, so in 27 minutes, you have your 1 and 2 samples extracted. And when you have like your 384 samples, that will be extracted in less than 1 hour. Then this MGISP 100 I was talking about the other time, this machine can do both the extraction as well as library preparation. It has a PCR machine integrated in the machine in the system. Unlike the NE32, which can do only the extraction. This one will do both the extraction and the PCR. It will do the library preparation. So it can do both the extraction and the PCR together. So based on then we have the thermocyclers. We have different thermocyclers which can be used to do, we have both the conventional thermocycler as well as a quantitative PCR thermocycler that can do the quantitative analysis. Then we have the sequencers. We have sequencers like DMV sequence G50 as well as G400. This sequence, we have only one of G400 in Nigeria and G50 in Nigeria. We have one G50 in Nigeria and we have G400 in Nigeria. This sequencer will, like I said the other time, they will allow to know the type of strains of organism that is being in circulation in the country. Like for instance, the COVID-19 we are still battling with. The machine helps to know the kind of strains that is in circulation, like the different strains that is in circulation, to know which one is in circulation and how to tackle it, how to prevent against the virus. And when you have sometimes you have co-circulation of two strains. So it is when you sequence that you know what exactly is happening in the community. So this machine will help us to know what actually is happening in our environment and which one and the way to go forward about it. So we have our partners that we support their products. The first, we have the MGI. We support MGI products. We sell their products, Biorad, Electrothermal, Copama, and all Biobase, Ensure, and all others. So thank you very much.
No, you didn't complete it. Please, can you complete it?
Thanks. We are ready to take your orders.
You can now give them invoices. All right. Please, ladies and gentlemen, can you put your hands together for Peter and Jane, one of our sponsors? I recognize our other sponsors, but at this point in time, it gives me great joy to invite Professor Obayori to please come and make the presentation of the conference communique. And afterwards, I most likely will hand over to Ifeoluwa Alabi as she helps with some other announcements. And I must say that it's been a great honor of being a part of the 8th edition of the African Conference on One Health and Biosecurity, with the theme, Strengthening Health Security and Mitigating Biological Threats in Africa. It's been a wonderful firm and a wonderful time. It's like some people are just coming for the conference. Okay, they're just leaving their training. All right, over to you, Professor Obayori.
Good evening, everyone. I am here to present the communique of the conference. Two of us drafted this communique as member of the team, myself, Oluwafemi Obayori, and my colleague, Dr. Lateef Babatunde Salam. The communique is in 4 parts. We have the preamble, the observations, the conference declaration, and the resolutions. So I'll start. It's titled Communique of the 8th African Conference on One Health and Biosecurity, themed Strengthening Health Security and Mitigating Biological Threats in Africa, held Wednesday 2nd to Friday 4th, November 2022 at the Civic Center, Victoria Island, Lagos, Nigeria. Preamble. The 8th African Conference on Health and Biosecurity, with the theme Strengthening Health Security and Mitigating Biological Threats in Africa, was held on Wednesday 2nd November to Friday 4th November 2022. The 8th edition, November 2022. The 8th edition of the annual conference was organized by the Global Emerging Pathogens Treatment Consortium, Get Africa, with the support of Lagos State Ministry of Health and in partnership with major non-state institutions across the world. The conference focused on ways of improving health security in the African continent and addressing emerging biological threats. The 3-day conference presents a unique forum to raise national, regional, and continental awareness and engage in deep introspection and robust interactions on existing health security measures and how to strengthen them as the first urgent step towards mitigation of emerging biological threats in Africa. The conference, attended by professionals and stakeholders across the various strata of health and allied sectors of the society, received presentations from resource persons in the health care sector and related fields. The following observations and recommendations emerged from exhaustive deliberations. Observations. One of the major lessons of recent outbreaks is that biosecurity has myriad dimensions permeating social, political, cultural, economic, ethical, legal, and technical aspects of human endeavors, thus necessitating an integrated, multidisciplinary approach to health security. 2, recent climate change incidents and emerging infectious diseases, particularly resurgence of Ebola, Lassa fever, and monkeypox, coupled with global inflation and food security issues, have negatively impacted ability of individuals, institutions, and government, especially in Africa, to meet their obligations in various critical areas of life, including health. 3, destruction of the environment, biodiversity loss, and consequent increase in conflict and terrorist activities, as well as the ease of genetic manipulation, has necessitated a rethinking of security ideology, architecture, and apparatus with increased emphasis on biological threats and how to detect, prevent, and mitigate them. 4, in the next 50 years, Africa will be a continent of megacities, with health, toxicity, and biosecurity threats being the major footprints of its population explosion. 5, African countries rate low in terms of biosafety and biosecurity awareness, capacity, and regulatory regime, even as pitfalls of waterborne diseases, foodborne diseases, and antimicrobial resistance threaten health security and total well-being of significant proportion of our population. 6, the African ecological and biodiversity landscape is not only a source of public health and biosecurity challenges, but also offers sustainable solutions to such threats, drawing especially on the continent's diverse and entrenched ethno-cultural appropriation of natural resources. However, there is poor involvement of Africa in bioeconomy, with only a few African countries having existing frameworks for promoting bioeconomy. 7, addressing health security issues in Africa requires much more than mere adoption of operational models from the developed world, where formal sectors are well established. Thus, the African informal sector cannot be ignored in building biosecurity measures and developing health strategies. 8, the passion, energy, and resilience of the youth, which are key factors driving change in any society, must be considered as a huge factor when elucidating biosecurity issues, and can also be harnessed to mitigate biosecurity threats. 9, civil society organizations and non-governmental organizations play a significant role in promoting health security consciousness through advocacy and engagement of critical stakeholders on proactive and reactive measures needed to minimize the danger and impact of acute public health events. 10, dual potentials of valuable biological materials and biotechnological research has implication for health security, and nations have responsibility to promote and ensure responsible use of such materials and technologies. 11, while there have been increased awareness and deliberate efforts to develop strategies for mitigating the public health impacts of climate change, the mental and psychosocial dimensions have received comparatively insignificant attention. 12, globally, and particularly in Africa, climate change impacts gender differently due to their historical and structural inequalities, promoted by social norms and laws that impose differentiated power roles and responsibilities on women and men in respect of life. 13, recent epidemics in Africa and responses at various levels within and outside the continent have further demonstrated that Africa is here to fully dismantle the foundations of perpetual exploitation of our countries and dependency while striving to be politically correct at the expense of wholesome development. 14, overlapping activities of health organizations such as Center for Disease Control, Africa Center for Disease Control, West Africa Health Organization, and World Health Organization, among others, have resulted in duplication of efforts, poorly coordinated responses, and frittering away of scarce human and material resources. 15, corruption, poor accountability, and poor budget monitoring remain the scourge of healthcare financing in Africa. And 16, digitalization of disease surveillance records, standardized data collection, and big data management, which are important requirements for biological threats mitigation preparedness, are still poorly developed in Africa, thereby posing serious impediment to the resilience of health infrastructures. Now, I now go to the conference declaration. Conference declaration. Cognizant of the ravaging impacts of emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases and the diverse dimensions and proclivities of biological threats in Africa, not unaware of the poor state of health infrastructure across the continent, convinced that Africa's vast ecosystem and biodiversities are the reservoir as well as veritable source of solution to biological threats, committed to leveraging on Africa's natural, ethno-cultural, and intellectual resources in a harmonious, collaborative, and coordinated manner, and mindful of the importance of healthy and mutually beneficial global agreements in addressing health issues, conference hereby agreed and declare as follows. To pursue constructive engagement in demanding 50% of national budgetary allocations to health sector in line with the 2001 Abuja Declaration as first-line charge and commitment of at least 1.5% of nations, plural, gross domestic product to medical education and health force training as fiducial benchmark for building resilient health infrastructure needed to strengthen health security in Africa. Reaffirmed unalloyed commitment to all aspects of the Convention on Biodiversity, CBD, including the Nagoya Protocol on access to genetic resources and equitable sharing, and demand equitable sharing, and demand African governments and all stakeholders to activate same commitment in principle and practice. Promote bioeconomy and eco-friendly exploitation of natural resources. And lastly, relentlessly and vigorously demand full implementation of existing national policies on biosecurity, biosafety, and One Health, as well as a total commitment to obligations at regional, continental, and global level, including the Biological Weapons Convention, Resolution 1540, and the Global Health Security Agenda, GHSA. And I'll go to the resolutions. There are 10 resolutions. I'll quickly take them now. In order to bolster health security, African governments should put in place robust and effective disease surveillance strategies premised on state-of-the-art, high-throughput genomic facilities and manpower to promote early warning systems for impending outbreaks, monitor and evaluate the impacts of intervention, and help to track progress towards specified goals. 2, there is need for increased budgetary allocation to the health sectors by African governments, concomitant with a shift in health financing perspectives to more Afrocentric donor funding and innovative financing models, incorporating both entrepreneurial and corporate social responsibility-based private sector participation. 3, budget monitoring for health financing should be people-centered, drawing on the participation of civil society organizations, the academia, and health workforce. 4, there is an urgent need for African governments to prioritize and expand the scope of medical education and practice to include multi-sectoral collaborations and incorporation of technology-based medical treatments such as personalized medicine, telehealth, and artificial intelligence and machine learning. 5, African governments, institutions, and relevant agencies should embark on massive communication and market incentive-driven, sustainable energy and natural products-based bioeconomy revolution, focusing on small and medium-scale agro-allied value chains. 6, in order to be able to build sustainable health security infrastructure and be well prepared to mitigate future outbreaks, Africa must engage in deliberate rejection of global monoculture and decolonization of language of scientific discourse, while appropriating foreign support in ways that fit into indigenous sociocultural peculiarities. 7, there is need to streamline outbreak preparedness and response through strategic coordination and collaboration among African countries and the various health agencies and organizations in order to ensure effective utilization of available resources. 8, African countries need to demonstrate total commitment to their international obligations with respect to health governance, particularly with respect to health governance, particularly the International Health Regulations, IHR, One Health Agenda, and the Global Health Security Agenda, GSSA. 9, climate change awareness, biodiversity conservation, One Health paradigm, and biosecurity training should be integrated into the curricula at the basic and high school levels to build consciousness and culture of sustainable development in Africans right from formative age. And lastly, 10, generation and management of public health data should be focused on timely collection, interrogation, storage, and analysis while leveraging on communities for wholesome surveillance. Thank you. Should come and pick it. We are not discussing it. We don't have the time to discuss it. I said we are not discussing it now.
Thank you, Professor Bayori, for that very detailed presentation. Our time is fast spent, so we may not really have time to discuss. But if there's any comments, 1 minute, we can just take it before we take the closing ceremony. Any contribution for 1 minute? Thank you very much. Finally, we are coming to the end of this wonderful conference. And before we go on, let's give ourselves a round of applause again for the wonderful presentations, the wonderful trainings, the wonderful food, everything we've had in the last 3 days. You guys are awesome. On behalf of the Global Emerging Pathogens Treatment Consortium, GET, I want to thank everybody for coming and staying here in the last 3 days. The last 3 days, we've had about 33 different presentations. We've had about almost 300 participants from over 20 different countries. And we have hundreds of people joining us online to be part of this very historic and wonderful conference. A round of applause to everybody again, to all our presenters, to all our vendors, to all our supporters, sponsors, to the Ministry of Health, Lagos State. There's very little GET we have been able to do without the support of the Ministry of Health. Everybody has been perfect. Everybody has been wonderful. To the gentlemen of the press, security guys, our friends from the United Nations, friends from WOW, friends from the Caribbean, people from all over the world. People flew 34 hours just to be part of this conference. It shows the importance of this conference to different countries and different people on the continent and our friends of Africa. I mean, there's nothing to take home in this conference. There's one thing that stood with me. It is the solution to African challenges will not come from abroad. It will come from within. And like the theme of this conference is, we have to start developing African-led solution to the emerging challenges that is facing us in Africa. Nobody will solve our problem for us. That is what we should take home. And this discourse we've been having the last 3 days is not just the end, but it's to open our minds to see what it's in Africa, the strength, the ability, the knowledge, and the expertise that this continent offers, and how to merge these strengths together to solve emerging challenges facing us as a people, as a nation, and as a continent. So thank you, everybody, for coming here. Thank you for being part of this very successful conference. Thank you to GET members. And let me call the chief host, Professor Akianla Abayomi, to round up the conference. A round of applause for him, please.
So good evening, everybody. It's past 6 o'clock, which is evening, and thank you very much for your perseverance. 3 days of high-powered intellectual discourse on One Health paradigms, biosecurity, health security, I think is a bit overwhelming. But at the end of the day, to make sure that this is not just a meeting where we talk to ourselves, but that we translate the resolutions into meaningful bites of advocacy to shift the pendulum of political will. And as academics, all we do is to generate knowledge and information with a view to influencing government. because it's only really governments that can define the policies and allocate the resources that we're all talking about. So thank God that there are people in government in this room from different countries. And I can just scan the room and see quite a number of influential people in this room. So these resolutions, and I'm speaking to myself as well, these resolutions are important. And these resolutions cannot remain on paper. They must translate into meaningful dialogue and into meaningful allocation of resources and to meaningful implementation of programs. I think we've heard severally how behind the curve we are in Africa in terms of the safety nets that we require to make the continent a biosecure environment. And it's a bit of a shame that in a meeting like this that is so rich in information that we are not able to attract more people. And part of the problem is that the subject matter is so complicated and it's so almost, when we talk about, for example, the Biological Weapons Convention, I mean, people think in Africa, well, why is that an issue for us? Nobody is about to attack us with biological weapons. But, you know, we fail to understand that even if it doesn't matter where the biological threat comes from, whether it's intentional or unintentional, the response is the same. So whether the pathogen is released out of a zoonotic event or is released out of an act of aggression, the medical and logistics and every other and security agencies all respond in the same way. And so therein lies the intersect between health, economy, and security. And so it's in everybody's interest that this kind of conference, and it's a very high-level meeting. I think I've been to several meetings all over the world, and I can't say that I've been to many meetings that are richer in the level and complexity of some of the issues that we've discussed over the last 3 days. And before I continue, I just want us to recognize the extreme hard work that the GET Consortium has put into attracting such high-level speakers from around the world, both physically and virtually. So let's just give Dr. and his team a round of applause. I think this conference has just been getting richer and richer with every year. And I can't even imagine what the theme of next year's conference is going to be or where it will be. In Lagos, we're going to try and keep it here because we benefit so much from the rich discourse that happens, so it's in our interest to keep it here. But I have to, it's not cast in stone. The COO of GET can decide to take it to Barbados, can take it to Nairobi, can take it to South Africa. But we will do our best in Lagos to woo him back so that it keeps happening in Lagos until someone else can offer something better than Lagos. And then we will gladly let it go and try and get it back another year. But I really would implore anybody here who is from another country that If you can get this meeting to your country, you'll be doing your people a great service because of the amount of information and the amount of learning that happens at these meetings. And it ripples out into the community, and people are hearing this kind of information for the first time, which is so important. And I really like the fact that we are targeting the younger population, and we're even going into the schools to make sure that we are diffusing this information very clearly, and that the future of this continent really depends on how much we can get the next generation to respond to the crisis that we're all experiencing. The continent is going through a serious environmental catastrophe. And if we don't do something very, very urgently, not just for this continent, but the entire global community, we've heard that we're running out of time. We've got about 9 to 10 years to bend the curve of greenhouse gas emission. If we don't bend the curve, and there are many skeptics around the world that don't believe that we can bend that curve, and if we don't bend the curve, then humanity in the next 20 or 30 years will be something very sad to observe. And so it's really up to us to make sure, and these kinds of meetings are absolutely crucial to the survival of mankind and the environment in which we live. And if we don't keep pushing the agenda and pushing the boundaries, then, we will obviously have nothing for the next generation to be proud about. So the resolutions we've heard, and thank you very much to Prof. Ayobami for succinctly putting all that information together. We're going to publish the proceedings of this conference in the journal, and the resolutions, we'll try and get them out to as many governments as possible. And as I said, it's incredibly important that this is not just a talk shop, but that this actually translates into shifting political attention and political commitment to apply the resources and to take this situation very seriously. So as I told you at the first day, His Excellency Mr. Governor has put together a very powerful contingent to go to Egypt in about 10 days for the climate change COP27 meeting. It's really the first time that I know that the government, we went last year, but there wasn't that much enthusiasm and sense of concern. But I think the climate aberrations that we're seeing around the world, if it's not flooding, it's fire. If it's not fire, it's drought. If it's not drought, it's migration. And so the whole world is in a state of anxiety. And we can see clearly, for the first time, what the trigger and the focal point of this global calamities that we're seeing. There's pandemics, fires, flooding, displacement, economic collapse, conflict. It all arises from contracting and shrinking resources. And so we can join the dots and see where the commonalities are. And then the solution is to go to the root cause. After we've done the analysis, to go to the root cause and address the root cause, which is the heavy footprint and the reckless footprint of humanity on this planet. So it's important that we understand the sequence of events, and my good friend, Dr. Damisa, clearly outlined it in his presentation today. And if the top medical intelligence officer of this country, understands that and is able to stand on this podium and present it to you, that is the government speaking to you. I think I can really go to bed in a little bit more of a comfortable state, knowing that the government understands what the problem is. And if the government understands what the problem is, then we do stand a chance to reverse the situation. So once again, congratulations to all of you. I mean, it's past 6 o'clock on the third day of the conference, and the room is still almost full. If it wasn't for people trying to catch their flights to get back to their destinations, this place would have been fuller. So you can give yourself a round of applause. And we look forward to seeing you same time next year for another exciting One Health conference. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Before we go, I want to say a very big thank you to some special set of people. Everything you've seen in the last 3 days have been put together by some excellent staffs that work with GETS round the clock to make sure that this is as good as you're seeing it. These sort of people have been working. Actually, after this conference, they rest for 2 days, and they start preparing for the next conference. And every other thing GETS will be doing next year. So it's an all-year cycle. And I tell you, it's no small joke. It takes a whole lot of funding, a whole lot of logistics, a whole lot of everything, and sometimes a whole lot of fighting. But if you have to fight, we'll fight to make sure that we'll continue to increase the standard. We don't maintain standard and get those that were here last year know that this year is better than what we had last year. And next year will be far, far better than what you're seeing now. That is what GETS is all about. So GETS staff that are here, can you please stand up and come to the podium as fast as possible? And please a round of applause for all of them. The earlier you better you clap, the faster they get here.
Don't sleep, wake up. Collect your money, wake up. Collect your money, wake up.
A round of applause, please.
Go get the moolah. Wake up.
These are the ladies and gentlemen that are working around the clock to make sure that everybody is comfortable. May not be 1,000, but we are small but mighty. I tell you, these people do miracle. And this thing you're seeing is a miracle. On behalf of myself, everybody is frowning face because I'm sure a lot of them have not had sleep. They've not slept in the last 3 days. Don't worry, you have 2 days of break. Saturday, Sunday, work starts on Monday. Yeah, so thank you to everybody. Please take a bow. Thank you. Everything that has a beginning must have an end, and it's not how long, but how well. The joy of this conference is that we all go back to our countries and start making impacts in our countries. All of us, like Richard said, is either we are contributing to the solution or we are contributing to the problem. There is no neutral position. So go back to your country, make sure we start making positive changes, and make the continent of Africa a better place for us and our children to live. Thank you very much for attending the 8th African Conference on One Health and Biosecurity. Thank you. Safe journey back to your countries. We'll see you next year, 2023, by God's grace. Bye-bye, and thank you for coming. We love you.
Don't be sad, understand. Everybody